Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast, powered by Kassoon Car. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Sophie Warren, an inspirational legal professional and founder of Legally Run, which is a highly popular legal blog on Instagram, where Sophie documents her legal career and has successfully ran 10 half marathons across the country in 7 months to raise money for various charities. So welcome, Sophie.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. We always have to start with our customary question on the Legally Speaking podcast. So on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, how real do you rate the TV hit series Suits?
I'd probably have to say about 4.
4, okay.
I feel like it portrays this really glamorous lifestyle of lawyers, which I just feel doesn't exist. And I feel like you get paid more in Suits than you actually do in real life. So yeah, not particularly realistic, but it's fun to watch, and it gives young lawyers a bit of inspiration if they do want to go into the corporate world.
Yeah, well said. I think 4 is probably a fair reflection. Yeah. And so at the top, I mentioned the word inspirational because I generally am impressed with how you fit it all in with what you do. But for people perhaps not too familiar with who you are and your sort of journey, do you want to sort of tell us a bit about you? And we'll obviously talk more about Legally Run a bit further on, but tell us a bit about you.
So I currently work in Birmingham in a law firm called Freeths. I currently work in their real estate department. I went to university in Birmingham, and I live not too far from Birmingham either, so I feel like I know that market quite well. Did a law with French law degrees, so I'd like to think I'm a good French speaker, but I haven't been to France in a while, so we'll have to test that out. Yeah, so in my spare time, I like running, as you've heard, and I didn't really run when I was younger, and then I wanted to do this event at school, and you had to audition for it, so I thought, I'll practice, and I actually didn't get into the event despite having trained for it, but I thought, you know what, that's not going to put me off, I'm just going to keep on going, and then I just carried on all the way through uni, post-uni, because obviously it's a free way to do exercise as well. So it keeps you really fit. And then last year, I decided to do these 10 half marathons, which I think we'll probably discuss later in detail, sort of the reasons behind it. So that's sort of the running side to me.
Did you always want to go into the law? Has that sort of been in the family? Was that what you wanted to do?
I actually wanted to be a pilot.
Really?
When I was really small.
Yeah.
I just find it absolutely fascinating, and I just think you have so much responsibility, and these aircrafts are so complicated. My dad was in the Air Force, right. And he worked with helicopters, so maybe that was some sort of link, but I just find flying fascinating. But I soon realised that my eyesight probably wasn't good enough to be a pilot, yeah. So I thought I'd go down the law route. It has mainly been law. I did consider sort of history and French because I still wanted to do a language, but an academic subject. But I decided to go sort of with law and the French side of it as well. And then since graduating, I know that it is the career I'd like to go into. So yeah, pretty certain, more certain than I was when I was about 5.
And I know there's a lot of influencers and people as well with regards, and this is something I'm big on championing. Yes, London is where there's, great quality legal work available, but, outside of London as well, in Birmingham, and I know there's a number of people sort of championing and banging that drum, but, people in the Midlands, there's good quality work and opportunities for people there that, if they don't, for whatever reason, get a training contract or an opportunity in the London market, there are still good opportunities outside of London, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Birmingham is the second biggest city in the UK, and it is very vibrant. And, in the past sort of 10 years, it's really sort of up and came, and it's even more up and coming. Like, there's so many developments going on. And most of sort of the large law firms do have a presence in Birmingham. So if you didn't or couldn't want to come to London, you can still get really good quality work in Birmingham with the chance of coming to London, on day trips to offices or even doing secondment. So just because you're in Birmingham, it doesn't mean you're cut off from London. And especially sort of, if HS2 comes in, obviously that link between Birmingham and London will become even stronger because obviously the travel time will be reduced. I think Birmingham's a really great place to be. And I think sort of give it another 5 and 10 years, I think Birmingham, London, equally as good.
Yeah, well said. No, I really want people to be aware of that as well, because I think a lot of people get so stressed and write to us saying, look, I've not found anything in London. I know I need to be in London. And yes, undoubtedly, yes, London is a great place to be, but people should be aware that there are other options that you can facilitate. Okay. And I guess, a large part of what you do is running. So, legally run. But have you always liked running? Have you always been a runner?
Well, like I said before, I didn't actually really like running that much, but I auditioned for that event at school and obviously didn't get it. I probably come from more of a swimming background.
Okay.
My dad is and was a massive sea swimmer, so I probably just got chucked into the water age 3 and expected to swim. So I sort of grew up with swimming, and then throughout school I played team sports, so like hockey, netball, rounders, etc. And then when I was at university, I sort of combined swimming and running, so I did triathlon. I'd say from probably like the age of 16 when I did my first half marathon, I thought, okay, I'm quite good at running, and it's a really good way to keep fit. But I haven't always been a runner, so it just goes to show that you don't have to be born a natural at it. You can work hard and get there.
You can indeed. And so when did you found Legally Run?
So I founded Legally Run in December 2018, so just over a year ago. But it wasn't actually called Legally Run.
Okay.
It was called Sophie Runs Halves. And that was obviously founded on the idea that I was running 10 half marathons. So I initially set it up as a platform to sort of promote my races and my fundraising. And then it was only in about April or May, because I was doing my LPC last year, that I thought, I need something else to talk about when I'm not talking about running. And I don't want people to think that that's the only thing that I do. So I wanted to sort of incorporate the legal elements of my life. So that's when I changed it to Legally Run. I did have some other names that I wanted to use.
Go on, give us one. Go on.
Sophie Runs Law.
Okay.
Because I thought one day, when I'm a partner, I'll be running the law. I think it was between Legally Run and Sophie Runs Law, but I decided not to have my name in it, so I went with Legally Run.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good name. And so, obviously, 10 half marathons, and that's a massive achievement, so congratulations for doing that. But what fueled your passion for wanting to start this?
So, in September 2018, my stepmom sadly died of secondary breast cancer, and she was a really brave woman, and she was also a very successful businesswoman in the Middle East, and she had this really successful career, and she had to give it up to move back to England and sort of undergo chemotherapy. And for me, when I think about my career and my future, when I'm successful, I don't want to have to make that decision. So I thought, I want to actually actively help raise money for charity so that they can, put the money towards finding a cure for secondary breast cancer, because it's actually incurable. And there aren't any drugs, well, there wasn't at the time, but there aren't any drugs accessible on the NHS for it. So that was sort of my main reason why I wanted to do it. And also, my dad had run the London Marathon previously for breast cancer now, so I just thought that this sort of running and fundraising for breast cancer now was a really good, initiative. So that's sort of why I wanted to do 10 half marathons. So it is quite a moving story, I think. And
absolutely.
But, I say good results, hopefully good results one day from it.
No, I think it's wonderful what you're doing and that sort of giving back piece. And I guess what's so admirable about the fact is, you are working in the legal industry. So a lot of people listening in be like, wow, how did you actually fit in training? So just talk us through like a typical day when you're trying to sort of train for 10 half marathons and over 7 months. So that's packing them in, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely think my project management skills are now through the roof.
Yeah.
It was quite difficult. I was doing my LPC part-time as well. So I was working in a law firm, obviously busy commercial law firm, doing my LPC once a week and then having to train for half marathons and sort of legally run as well, which is quite time consuming. So I really had to prioritise and learn time management, and I had to make sure, I mean, my priority was probably my LPC at the time because obviously I was studying, wanted to get a good result. But I had to make sure that sort of every weekend I was doing a long run, that I was going to the gym a couple of times a week and maybe trying to go running once during the week. So it really was quite difficult, especially sort of from December to April when it's dark, it's wet, it's cold. The last thing you want to do at night is go running. It takes a lot of willpower, but luckily I have some really good friends at home. Charlie and Katrina, they literally been like my rocks. Like, they would come running with me. One of them even did one half marathon with me, and she talked the whole way through. Really annoying, but got me round. So yeah. I had quite a lot of support as well. And
that's important, isn't it? Particularly when you're taking on these big challenges, you know, to keep the consistency up, you need a good network around.
It is, definitely. And I think that's where Legally Run helped as well, because, you know, I was constantly updating my followers and everyone would comment saying, you know, you're doing really well, I'm really proud of you, you're an inspiration, keep going, blah, blah. And even though it's on social media and it's not in person, it's still really nice to know that people are encouraging you on. So I personally think that if I hadn't have had that sort of network on social media, it probably would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you are very good at sort of keeping active and updating your followers and what you're doing as well, which I think is really important with it. And we've touched on it there. You mentioned your, I think father said has done the London Marathon, and that's your next challenge, right? That's the next one coming up. So you kind of tick the box with 10 half marathons and onto the full marathon now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to have a challenge because I think life would be a bit boring if you didn't have something to challenge yourself with. So yeah, that's right. In 10 weeks time or however long it is, I'll be running 26.2 miles, which is a fairly long way. And a lot of people said, oh, you know, you've run a half marathon, you'll be fine. But the thought of having to run another half marathon on top of a half marathon makes me feel slightly sick. And the training is a lot more intense, I think. And sort of when you do half marathons, you don't really need to change that much of your lifestyle, like your diet, etc. Like, that's fine. Whereas with a marathon, you actually have to sort of change it, and you know, you can't go out every Friday and sort of have about 5 glasses of wine. So it's quite a big difference. But no, I'm really looking forward to that, and that's sort of another story quite close to my heart as well.
Yeah. So who are you running for the London Marathon?
So I'm running the London Marathon for a more local charity. Sort of. My 10 half marathons are for a national charity, Breast Cancer Now, whereas this one's a local charity in Wolverhampton called The Haven.
Which we must say was well publicised. You made the local press, and you know it's been big news. So let's kind of give credit where credit's due. Really well done.
Yeah, I did. I made it into the local newspaper, which was fab. Actually sort of took up half a page, and my face is massive on there, but at least people have seen it. Yes, that was really good publicity for both them and me. They are a local charity that support victims of domestic violence and homelessness, and I volunteered with them when I was 16, and they're actually the charity that I did my first half marathon for, so they're not completely unfamiliar to me. But the reason why I'm running the London Marathon for them is my granddad was the founder of that charity back in the 1970s, and unfortunately he sadly passed away in August. And he was really, really dedicated to his work. You know, up until the day that he died, he was on the board of trustees, and he, you know, his work was his life. And when I was younger, he always used to talk about sort of domestic violence, the changes in legislation. So perhaps that's where my passion to do law came from as well. When he passed away, The Haven sort of wrote an article about him, and they really said how the women in Wolverhampton wouldn't be where they are if sort of my granddad hadn't set the charity up. So I wanted to do it sort of in his memory and you know, for the wonderful work that he'd done. And he also didn't get to watch me finish all my other runs as well, which is quite sad. So I know that he'd be very proud
Absolutely.
To do this for quite a charity close to home. And this morning, actually, before I came here, I went to the charity and met their fundraising manager. So we can sort of discuss like initiatives that we can do in fundraising events, because we have been emailing, but I think it's better to meet someone in person.
Yeah, and we'll definitely share all the links after this. And if people, you know, are legally speaking loyal listeners, I'm sure will be very happy to contribute and do what we can to get behind you. And that was really, really nice. You talk about your grandfather, and I think we talked off air about our synergies. Yeah. So you may recall Kassoon Carr, the car side. My grandfather actually sort of ran a very sort of successful law firm, and I wanted to leave a legacy in sort of his honour in terms of, you know, best in class work. And he did a lot of trustees and charity work. So it's really nice that you're sort of doing that as well. So it's a real pleasure and honour to have people on like you doing great things. Okay, and the other thing is you are a really big networker because you're at the early start of your legal career. There's a massive sea change to what it was years ago. You've got to be prepared to get from out of the desk and just drafting the documents, sitting from behind. You've got to get out there and network, right? So I know you're close friends with the London Young Lawyers Group, but again, for people who are sort of at the junior start of their careers or even senior way through their careers, what tips do you have for networking and how do you go about it?
So this is something that I wish I'd have known when I was at university. I think I sort of have three main tips. Just be confident and don't be afraid. You know, when you meet new clients, you're going to have to speak to them. You've never met them before. There's absolutely nothing different from meeting another lawyer or an accountant, etc. So just be confident, be yourself, and you can't really go wrong with that. And networking is more about actually making friends as well as making sort of acquaintances. And most of the time, you probably won't even talk about work-related stuff. It'll probably be more common interests. I think if, for example, you're networking with, I don't know, a law firm that you want to join, I think it is good to be prepared. So, you know, if you want to go up to a partner and ask some questions, then it's good to sort of have done your research beforehand. But if that's not the situation, then it's not always as important to be prepared. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And I really have seen that because at first, you know, a couple of years ago, I felt scared going up to someone I'd never met before who was quite high up in the legal profession. But I think they really respect that. And the worst thing that someone is going to say to you is no, or I'm sorry, I haven't got time to speak to you. And if that's the worst thing that someone's ever going to say to you, well, it's nothing, it isn't anything. You'd really be surprised how far it gets you. And like I said before, people prefer speaking in person than on email or phone calls. So I think people overlook it sometimes, but it's really important and it's really good to build those sort of relationships.
I think you just, you know, in the modern day, you've got to take charge of your career and you've got to go out there and get it. And actually, if you approach these people with something quite, you know, interesting or substantive or quite flattering, you know, most people are very happy to help you. You know, a lot of people have got the perception, they're going to be too busy. But actually, no, if you show a real interest and write to these people saying, or get in touch with these people that you want to meet them and you're kind of demanding their time, they'll actually really appreciate that because you're taking things seriously. So, yeah,
I agree. Because every undergraduate or graduate knows that the legal profession is so competitive and you have to be proactive, otherwise you're not going to get a training contract. You know, unfortunately in most of the cases it's not just going to fall on your lap, and if it does then you're extremely lucky. So you do have to be proactive, and I think networking and going up to people is a sign of being proactive, and then the person will sort of reciprocate that and help you out, and then you will be remembered and you will be recognised as that person that went up and sort of introduced yourself. I actually was speaking to someone the other day and they said the best icebreaker for networking is to compliment someone's clothing. Which, if someone came up to me and said, I like your handbag, I'd be like, thanks.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing, is it? If you get a nice compliment, it's never a bad thing. It's probably not the worst thing you can do. And, you know, we are in 2020, so social media is massive.
It is.
What do you think people should be doing, particularly if they're connected to the law? Because a lot of people think, I'm going into the law, you know, I've got to keep sure my social media's X. You know, what's your advice for people who may be trying to raise their profile in line with social media? Any tips you'd get? Because you've got huge followings, right?
I think sort of, if you want to be what's called a sort of a legal blogger or, you know, have a presence on social media, you do need to sort of find a market or a certain niche, because like you said, like they're growing, like there's so many law blogs, there's so many people on social media now. So I think with me, it's sort of my running as well as my law career and sort of my fundraising elements that attracts both lawyers and both people who are into running. It's good to promote the relationship between law and social media because, like you said, people are like, I'm going into career in law, like, have to be really careful what I put on social media. And to a certain extent, yes, but more and more law firms, for example, are using social media. You know, Shoesmiths is massive on social media, sort of Pinson Mason, Clyde and Co. Most big law firms now have a presence on social media. So it's a way to engage with them, again, before you sort of meet them in person. So if you're looking to sort of start a law blog or to have a presence on social media, I wouldn't necessarily think of, can I do this, can I do that? I would just sort of go for it, have a think about what it is you want to get from that blog. Because obviously for me at first, it was to promote my running and fundraising. And so my main aim was to get donations.
Yeah.
But then after that, obviously that evolved and it was, okay, I want to showcase my legal career, I want to attract followers, expand my network. So have a think about what it is that you want from your presence on social media, because like I said before, sort of if you give to people, then you'll probably get back. And I found that a lot, like you mentioned earlier with the London Young Lawyers group. I took over their social media in December. I love doing those sorts of things because you can be really creative, and you get to know different people, and different people follow you. So that was great. And then I was invited to their Christmas party.
And then one thing I was going to say is I think they're a wonderful site, and we do a lot of work with them as well. But you definitely encourage people sort of at any sort of PQE point really to join there, because you get so many benefits from that, right? Yeah,
100%. I'm not qualified yet. And, you're sort of liaising with people, who are 5 years PQE, people who aren't qualified, people who aren't even in the legal profession. So it is a really great way to expand your network, and they're really supportive, and they're all really friendly. And when we went to the Christmas party, like chatting away, I'm actually now an ambassador for them, which is really great as well. Get to promote their events, get to really sort of chat with them about what's going on in both like London, and hopefully sort of promote that in Birmingham as well.
And because, I think last year and this year there was some really cool events, again, because a lot of the influencers in Birmingham. Do you want to talk about some of the events that sort of happened last year and stuff that may be happening this year in Birmingham from a sort of legal events perspective?
I think there's definitely probably like more frequent events in London than there are in Birmingham, but I know that I've been to quite a few balls, like with the Birmingham Solicitors group. That's the one I went to, and Chrissy was there, so it was nice to catch up with her. So that's the thing I say, like, London and Birmingham could one day be equal, but there's sort of more of a social scene probably going on in London. I think the awards that you're talking about, the Birmingham Person of the Year awards.
Correct. Yeah.
They happen like every May or so. And again, that's not just actually lawyers. That's like people from different professions. So that's another great event that takes place in Birmingham. There is quite a lot of social stuff going on.
So Sophie, is there anything from your experience today in the legal profession what you would change or offer as a service to help people in your position?
The one thing I found really hard is sort of balancing doing applications, working sort of full time, and not really having any sort of support. And what I mean by that is there are so many good organisations out there, like aspiring solicitors, that do lots and lots of good work and really help people get TCs. But if you don't qualify for that, then obviously you can't really benefit from their help, and that is sort of where I think I've fallen short, because I don't have that additional external support. So I think in the future I would maybe like to sort of set up some sort of organisation that's helped people in my position. So if you haven't gone down the traditional route, if you've done your LPC part-time, if you're working full-time, you don't have the time to do vacation schemes, and more firms are recruiting exclusively from back schemes, and which is great. Obviously you can get to know the firm, etc. But if you're working full time, it means that you have to take annual leave, or and it's quite difficult, because whilst it is your career and you need to make sacrifices, which I 100% agree with, if you spend all your annual leave working, you'll burn out, and that's not well-being, which is obviously something the legal profession is trying to promote. And I think if more and more law firms turn to recruiting exclusively via VAC schemes, that almost creates another gap in the legal profession, which excludes people that can't apply for VAC schemes. So, for example, I actually met a law firm, and they recruit exclusively, nearly exclusively from their VAC scheme. And I said, well, what if you're working full-time and you can't do it? And they said, oh, you could put that down as a mitigating circumstance. And I was like, I don't really see that as a mitigating circumstance. I see that as like 99% of probably graduates, trying to get legal experience, trying to earn money. So I think, something needs to be created where sort of, I don't know, maybe a 3-day VAC scheme or a 4-day VAC scheme, something that's more manageable if you are working. I'd like to help people that have been in my position, or haven't, taken the sort of traditional route of law.
Well said. And obviously you're definitely career driven as well. That's you're deeply passionate about Legally Run and wanted to get that off the ground, but there's no disputing that you want to be a partner in a law firm one day, and you're going on that journey, and it's definitely going to happen.
It will.
I have no doubt about that. But what are some of your future ambitions, sort of short-term ambitions? What are you hoping to achieve? And just give us a flavour of your journey.
One of the things I want to sort of showcase is that your career journey to sort of being where you want to be is not actually as straightforward as people think. And I think people still have this sort of perception of the legal profession as being, you graduate, you get a training contract, you qualify 2 years after that, but that's just not how it works. And I think a lot of people need to understand that there's so many different branches to that. Like, people have things going on, people don't always have the time to invest in sort of applications, and it's, you know, it can be quite disjointed. Because for example, I thought I wanted to be a family lawyer. This was after a pilot. And so I actually worked in family law for about a year, and then realised, actually, this definitely isn't for me. Like, my skills are better suited to sort of a commercial environment. So then I left and obviously went into commercial property. So that sort of has delayed my career by a year, I guess you could say. So I haven't taken the traditional route at all, and I still don't have a training contract. So I'm doing all this extra stuff, but I'm actually not on the route to qualification yet.
But there's a message in there of kind of just don't give up. I think that's the other thing as well.
100%,
Determination is so important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, I've been rejected from, you know, multiple law firms, and it is disheartening. And you do think, well, actually, like, what more can I do? What more can I offer? Especially if you do extracurricular stuff, if you do have other interests. But if you want to get somewhere and that is your goal, then just don't give up, because if you work hard, it will be recognised and you will get to where you want to be. And I need to practice what I preach, because you know, for example, today I got a rejection of probably one of my dream law firms. And, you know, I spent 10 minutes sort of feeling sorry for myself. And then I was like, no, fine, like, move on. It obviously wasn't meant to be. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, but I think that's the whole point of having these sort of brutally honest conversations, is the fact that, you know what, if you're prepared to dig deep, if you're prepared to go out and network, if you're prepared to do all of these things, then that's what the legal profession wants to take on now. It's not, it's not a case that you're just going to get a job. It's never been like that, but it's even more competitive than ever. So you need to be prepared to put yourself out there. And I think, you know, lawyers aren't anymore people who just sit in the office, churn out contract after contract. You do need to be able to build relationships with people. You do need to be able to go out and network. And if you're doing all of that even before your legal career has started, then it means that when you're actually qualified, it'll be so much easier. And so me, for example, you asked me, sort of, that probably was the question, what my sort of aims were, and it is to build my professional network, both in Birmingham, both in, you know, in London, hopefully across the country, maybe in a few sort of in countries abroad. Because once you build this sort of brand and you get a reputation, that probably, you know, you might win clients that way, or, you know, and that's probably one of my main aims as well. Yeah. And what about your French? Keep up your French? Because I kept telling people after I did my A-levels and a little bit of uni that I'll keep up my French. One of my biggest regrets right now is not being able to speak very good French at all. So I mean, when I left uni, one of my, I thought I was going to read Le Monde every day. I struggled to read a newspaper every day, so that's out the window. It's like riding a bike, though. If you were forced into a situation where you had to learn it again, you would be able to. And occasionally I do sort of read an article in French. But, you know, everyone speaks English today, sadly to say. So it's actually harder to find someone to speak French to. But depending sort of where I end up in 10 years' time, you never know, I might be able to use it a bit more. But going skiing next week in France, so we'll see if I can order a beer or something. Exactly. And in terms of just the last couple of points from me, the legal industry is going to change significantly during your career. What do you think are going to be some of the main changes, and what are you most excited about seeing potentially happening as you start your sort of legal journey? Yeah, I think one of the main changes, as I've probably already mentioned, is sort of the perception of a traditional lawyer is changing. You know, clients are looking for innovative young lawyers that can offer more than just legal advice. And I think we're going to see law firms that aren't just recruiting lawyers, they'll be recruiting sort of legal project managers, legal analysts. You know, there'll be so many different types of legal personnel, because the client will want actual specific people. And I think that's something, again, that probably older partners are going to have to recognise, that this traditional lawyer will not be joining because it's not what a client needs anymore. So I think that's something really exciting. Probably not for people my age, but sort of 18-year-olds who are thinking of going into law in sort of 5 years' time, that'll be something that I'll have to consider, whether they want to be like a project manager or an analyst. And I think, obviously technology is a big one. It's sort of, is it going to be brought in? Is it not? Are law firms already embracing it? So that's something exciting as well. You never know. You might be able to just sit behind your desk and click your fingers and something might happen. So I think, there is a lot changing in the legal profession, and it is a very exciting time. Hopefully I won't be replaced by a robot. I don't think that's going to happen just yet.
No, I think there's definitely going to be legal tech. It's just, I think it's adapting with the tech, isn't it?
Exactly.
And sort of modifying the roles. And that's where, a lot of sort of, junior legal work will just be sort of diversified. It's probably a different way to describe it, most definitely. Okay, and sort of for you, 2020, you've got the marathon coming up, but is there any sort of big goals, or by you get to the end of the year, you want to achieve X? Is there anything you're kind of gunning for?
I want that training contract.
Yeah, good for you.
That is probably my main goal for 2020. To just channel my whole entire energy into getting where I want to be, because I want to be a solicitor at the end of the day. And, you won't be a solicitor without a training contract. Focusing on my career is probably my number one priority for 2020. But also, one of my New Year's resolutions as well was to be more bold and just ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think with that in mind, hopefully that elusive training contract should arrive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think from behalf of all of us on Legally Speaking, I think it's really great that we can have people like you on who are doing such inspirational things for the legal professional. A, you're still continuing on that journey, not giving up. B, you're actually doing great things for great charities. You're massively networking. You're a great example of sort of the rising star for the legal profession that's going to be, I have no doubt. So from all of us, we hope it happens, and keep us documented on your journey. And thanks for also sort of sharing lots of tips and insights into other people. And I hope you inspired others there, particularly in the sort of years of sort of mindfulness and wellness as well, that you can, if you can balance the work-life balance, get out there and be a bit more active as well, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sophie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you.
Wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much.